What's going on today, Jamie?
Hey, Scott, Steve, what's
Hello.
going on over there?
Happy Monday.
Indeed, happy Monday. And the market did have a happy Monday. Nice and green for a finish. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail here, but just want to thank everybody for popping in to hear what we have to say today. Today is March 5th. March is almost a quarter of the way over. February is in the history books, so welcome to another edition of Office Hours. I am Jamie Hodge. And before we get into the good stuff, quick moment to get the legalese done here. Just want to make sure everybody's aware. Of course, most of you are, but just in case there are any newcomers, and just as a blanket statement in general, everything we share with you guys is for educational purposes only. If you need investment advice, you need to be told what to buy, what to invest in, when to do it, please seek out a registered investment advisor or another licensed individual that can help you out in that capacity. All right, before we get going here, just a quick word or two about what we have going on at Trade Ideas other than the award-winning scanning software. We've got a nice little community that we've been fostering here for past 2, 3, 4 years here, and it's really starting to take root. It all kind of started with, well, it started a long time ago with the forums, which became Barry's trading room. Of course, Barry opens the room 30 minutes before the open and sits in there and trades all day, manages the room, and showcases his trading style along with the TI technology, and it's a great place to learn. You don't even have to be a subscriber to get in there and participate or observe. So if you haven't been doing that, get in there and check it out. Of course, today's office hours with myself and Steve, and then Steve takes the helm on the Tuesday hourly webinars with the trade of the week. I'm sure he'll wax a little bit about the latest trade of the week, which got off to a really nice start here when he does our market recap. Then we change gears a little bit and we bring in Dan and Brad. Dan is the founder and CEO of Trade Ideas, and Brad is what we might call Chief Technical Officer. Always good to hear from those guys on Wednesdays. Now, the 1 hour webinars we round out on Thursday with Andy taking the helm with the trading studio, and I ride shotgun with him. Of course, on Fridays, the ever popular 3 hour long come one, come all, anything trade ideas related webinar, which goes from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. Now, what you don't see on here are the webinars that started this week. And they're going to be going from, let's see, 12 to 1:30 Eastern, I believe, Steve, on a daily basis, Monday through Thursday.
Yes, for active users.
In addition to what we're already doing in order to help fill the void for the need of training on the product. So doesn't matter, you know, anytime you might need help, there's going to be a daily webinar in addition to these 1 hour webinars where you can pop in there and get the help you need, and then the 3 hour one on Friday. So we're doing everything we can to cover the bases there. Make sure you guys get what you need. Okie dokie, moving right along here. Of course, we're going to pass it over to Steve here in just a second, let him break down the technical aspects of the market and, you know, what happened today, where we might be headed, looking at those footprints in the sand. And then we'll get on to the rest of the stuff here. Got some pretty interesting, well, some nice observations. A lot of things flowed today, even though our AI Holly had a kind of a back and forth session today, there were still a lot of tasty nuggets out there to be had. So having said that, Steve, if you're ready, I'm going to toss this
Sure.
Incoming.
Incoming. All right, screen one, perfect. All right, you all should have a view of my my monitor now. And thank you, Jamie. I will go ahead and do a little bit of market recap here. For those that haven't seen my screen, my daily chart on the left, and my 15-minute is the preferential time frame for the intraday stuff. I'm not much for a 5-minute guy. I'm more of a pull the zoom window out a little bit and look at the 15 minutes. And so let's open up the daily and the spiders. We always like to start with the spiders, and we had kind of the tale of 2 months here so far. We had a beautiful January, buy the dip, New Year, excited. And then we had some real nasty volatility with downside volume, a couple big days and a couple of big bounces in those big days last week. Well, where we kind of last left everybody was, this declining 20 period moving average, and I was talking about these spikes coming through and not being able to close above a 20-day moving average until we got to Friday, which was this Friday right here, and a little bit of Fed jawboning, talking about buying bonds and supporting the market. Kind of helped the footprints in the sand close in a positive fashion. A little bit of follow through on Monday, and then we spent 3 days of big pullback and then a bounce into Friday. Well, today I was really wondering what was going to happen, and if we look at the opening salvo here, this is the opening range here for the S&P for the spiders. A little bit of a gap down from Friday, kind of chopped sideways, almost went to lows, and then thought about it, and then the sellers just didn't have it. The buyers pushed us right back up into play again. So on the daily chart, what they're trying to do here is dig this in and make this a higher low off of this low back here. If the bulls can dig in and support this level and build a base off of this and continue to move higher, well then of course, it just begs the question, where to? Back up to these levels to make an assault back on this level of supply. So, if all things continue green, we kind of creep back up to this level, this is going to be where the rubber hits the road, guys, to see if we can break out of that high and punch our way through to create a higher low and eventually maybe a higher high based off of this one here. What I do see on the flip side that needs to be resolved quickly is this 50 period moving average. And if I zoom in a little bit, it's the blue line, which is kind of going sideways for us now. And it's come into play a few times. It came into play on Thursday. You can see it was the high of Thursday's candle. And we got really close to it today, but kind of backed away from it. So tomorrow or the next day, if we can post a close above that blue line 50 period moving average, then we might still be on the march back to putting in a higher low and trying to assault this near-term resistance of the S&P. If we cannot get a close back above this 50-day moving average over the next 2 or 3 days and we start wicking through it like we did back here, well, then we need to start maybe throwing some caution up again. But today, the first hour, like I said, was a lot of back and forth. The market was really trying to find its direction and see if it could build off of Friday or not, and it did. And so let's take a look here. The 0.82 relative volume, well, not bad, but 1.0 would be normal volume for the S&P today, and we got just underneath that. Let's take a look at the Qs. Qs had also a nice bounce. And notice the moving averages are not even threatened anymore here in the NASDAQ. So the technology-laden NASDAQ is essentially our leader going forward, with the 10, the 20, and the 10 period all having the price closing above those moving averages. So this is the best looking chart we've got right now. Excuse me. Not only that, off of the big bounce that we had, like the Dow, if I put the Dow up, the Dow did not bounce as vigorously as the Qs did coming back to this level. I'll go back to the Qs. So this level's way up here in the Q. So we almost got all of the decline back in that one big bounce. And then, of course, same thing goes here for the Qs. Big green candle on Friday going into the weekend. Market opened up today, went to lows for a minute and came back and just decided, nope, we're going higher. And so on the daily chart, we're printing green candles again. And same thing kind of is really going to come into play in the Qs, is not only is the prior high very close to the all-time high, but well, that's the case. The prior high is very close to the all-time high. So this is really going to be where the rubber meets the road for the Qs going forward if we can get a price movement above that. The IWMs, Russell 2000s, kind of a different look. It didn't have the vigorous bounce that the spiders and Qs did, but it's still trying to do the same thing. And you can see that it also got hung up here at its 50-day moving average, doing 0.79. So all the indexes are bouncing with green candles today, but doing it on kind of rather anemic volume. And then the last one to check was the diamonds, also very anemic volume today, but trying to dig in off of this low and trying to put in a low down here and dig in off of that and move higher once again, but still under the 50-day moving average. So, the bulls are probably have a little bit of cockiness to them right now because they didn't get the sell-off that we thought we might get. We got to push higher and then a head fake back lower, but the digging in on Friday and building on that candle is, good news for now. We'll see how it plays out. The trade of the week, which I'll talk more about tomorrow, was Bank of Internet. A couple things I want to talk about. One of the reasons I liked this chart was look at the 4 charts we just looked at. Okay, Bank of Internet looks nothing like those charts. This thing has been relatively strong considering what the market has been doing. It's been bouncing off this 20 here, bounced off the 20 average here, and then going into the weekend, we were really close. I even highlighted this BOFI and also I think CHGG in our last webinar last week. Both of these off the squeeze me play, basically moving higher to a 52-week new high, but with short float being very high as well, helping propel a short squeeze dynamic to get the price action to move. So both of those did well. I may have slipped and talked about both a few times during the week, but that's what I really liked about it, was that it was going sideways with 40% short the float, guys. 40% of 50 million are short. And so when you've got that many people short in the market and the relative strength of BOFI compared to what the rest of the market's been doing, this sideways action was really interesting to me. And there was a bit of a head fake, almost like when you swing a golf club. Sometimes there's a half an inch of a backswing, and then we start or let me rephrase that, half an inch of a forward press, and then we go into our backswing. So sometimes you get little head fakes to pull it back and then make that charge. And so going into the weekend, I saw that it was setting up really nicely sideways, gave us a little bit of a pullback, and then 2 green bars heading right back up to that level. That was a good reason to call this out because this stock has been holding up very well. And lastly, I just want to add the main ETF for regional or for national banks, which is what Bank of the Internet is a bank that does business in all 50 states. This ETF's not looking too bad. This is a very healthy looking sector, the banking sector. Maybe you could speculate if interest rates are getting ready to start to go on the rise, well, then the banks have a little bit more juice to play with and a little bit more margins in their activities. So that's my story for the markets this week. I'm sticking to it. Keep an eye on a close above this 50-day moving average in the S&P, and then obviously this level of supply up here that showed up last week. If the bulls are going to stay in charge again, and if this 10 to 12% correction actually did what it was supposed to do, which was a watershed moment and kind of clear the decks and get out the weak hands, well, there's nothing to say that we can't build off of it. But for right now, we just need a little bit more information. All right.
Good stuff, Steve. Good stuff.
Yeah, David. Bofi has been on the squeeze me. It was all last week too, and then when it pulled back a little bit, I kept my eye on it, and then when it bounced back up towards the new 52-week, it showed back up. And so going into Friday, it was actually on that scan. But yeah, hopefully good things to go there. I'm looking for like a nice 10% move, which I think is, I forgot what the target is, but it's about a 10% target. So back to you. Looks like you took it back.
Yes, I did, and hopefully you got eyes on.
I got it.
Yeah, and so, hey, what a great start to that trade of the week, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. So, talking about Holly, our good old resident AI. Well, I've got too many lines here. Let me just push delete a little bit. Okay, so interestingly, of course, we all know what happens when gaps come into play. It doesn't make things easier on the old statistical system. However, I think what's more important to kind of notice here is 3 consecutive down days in a row on the SPY, which kind of explains why. With Holly's strategy complement today, of course, we had 11 total, which is kind of on the high side. And, I always notice once she gets up to 11 or 12, things get a little bit more iffy on the session. Maybe that's an ongoing correlation. Maybe it's just what I choose to remember. But it sure kind of seems like that when the deck gets really stacked like this. More importantly, more short strategies than normal showing up. Of course, looking at 3 consecutive down days, we can see, the input was given. So it's no surprise to see 4 short strategies show up out of the 11 today. Of course, just because they show up, as we can see here, doesn't mean they're necessarily going to fire. These guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them didn't even fire today. We did get a little bit of short action though. So it was kind of a mixed bag with Holly today. We can see whether we're looking at, come on, click for me. There you go. Risk off. You know, kind of like the EKG readout again, spiking the highs all the way back down to the zero line, spiking up again, not quite back to zero, but close enough. And then, of course, risk on, where we're holding everything, even more of the EKG, maybe seismograph type earthquake chart that we're seeing here. So, of course, for those of you who watch Holly on a daily basis, once you start to see this type of activity, kind of gives us a little heads up. Of course, a lot of the times it's too far into the day. Sometimes it happens early on. Other times we see this play out. But it doesn't really matter how you slice it today. Risk on, risk off, all over the map, back down to the zero line several times. Now, that's the overall stats. Now, if we try to read between the lines a little bit here and kind of see what we could have capitalized on, keeping in mind, once again, that Holly is just another high-quality information system or window that we watch like any other window, like an alert window, top list, so forth and so on. This one is different because Holly's bringing us that statistical probability to the party. So usually on a day like today, especially where we get some nice continuation on the SPY, we get a lot more in the risk on column and a lot more to choose from. But we can see here today, not a whole lot in the spread between risk off and risk on here. We got two guys up here showing a higher total on risk on, and of course power hour was one of these guys, and that wasn't until the very last hour. So for most of the day, it was just this guy right here that was showing a higher risk on than what was taken in risk off, which was actually a stop out. Now, I want to put on the brakes real quick here because I want to bring up kind of an important point here before we progress. Well, let's see here. My sheet has escaped me. There it is, hiding back there. Okay, so I'd like to talk about the expectations before we get into the hot. Well, we've already kind of broached the topic here, but let's back up a little bit. Expectations, very important. Every day, every single trade, we have to have reasonable expectations. So, how do we glean some expectations on a daily basis? Well, this will look familiar to a lot of you. The compare count windows that I check 15 minutes into the market every day, which are basically looking for footprints in the opening 15 minutes, which can hopefully give us a peek at what the institutions might be up to for the day. So focusing on the two on the right over here, the big caps, 4 billion and 5.4 billion and above on the market cap. After the first 15 minutes, a very healthy upside bias. Very healthy meaning way above 55%. A bias is good, no matter how small or big it might be. It can give us a little bit of information. Typically anything less than 55%, you know, might expect to see some stocks, the ones that are really being purchased heavily, have a little continuation. But as a whole, it's going to be one of those days where, you know, the pullbacks might not go back up. But on a day like today, where we're seeing 59%, 61%, we're going to have a lot more follow through theoretically on some of the bigger names. And of course, keeping in mind that we're getting this information 15 minutes after the open. And so if we take a gander at the SPY chart here, and we're looking at 5-minute candles here, just for easy eyes here. Steve's rubbing off on me here. I'm just going to go ahead and kick it over to 15 minutes here so everybody doesn't have to squint. Okay, so here we are at the end of the first 15-minute candle. We get this peek into a potential future where we're seeing a lot more accelerated buying in the opening 15 minutes. And while we're on that topic, you know, one can surmise that these stocks that we'll talk about here in a little bit were being purchased by the institutions. Netflix, Square, a handful of other ones that were being just, man, they really rallied, formed that little bull flag type formation, consolidated, and then continued. And so if we have that little piece of information and we, you know, typically at the end of the first 15 minutes, we have to let a little bit of a range develop. Now I'm going to flip back to 5s here just to give you an idea of what I was seeing, as all this played out on the open. So for me, 5, 10, 15, I'm seeing, okay, I get the information right here, boom. And then what do? We regress back down to here. Now we had already put in the low right here on the open. So we took a cruise up to highs, we went back down to lows, and then started the climb back up. And of course, once we broke that level, it was off to the races today. Now, as Steve was, showing us earlier, this nice big move on the SPY here today and finishing up here very close to highs, not on the most massive volume. But then again, our up days here lately haven't been near as heavy as the down days that we've had. It's going to take a little bit of, capitulation here to get things back in sync, but not paltry volume, just slightly below normal. And the move was nice and strong, not a whole lot of pullback during the majority of that move there. So after the first 15 minutes, we've got a little peek under the rug. Hey, no guarantee, but the institutions are really showing a strong upward bias or a buy-side bias today from what we can glean from the first 15 minutes.
Your compare count windows, are they shareable in the PDF, or do you have to give them out?
I believe they're in the PDF.
Okay.
If they're not in the PDF, somebody give me a heads up and I'll gladly drop them in the chat.
I don't think we have the handouts panel with the PDF window going today. So, Jamie, there are a couple people asking about that useful screen. So
yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure I drop it in the chat before we disperse for the day. But that's a very nice piece of information to have 15 minutes into the market, right? And of course, it's not something that you just want to jump on immediately and go, hey, this means the market's going up. No, it means that there's a very high probability that if the buying continues, it could. So what do? We basically let the range develop. And then, of course, once it comes back up here, having that information, well, that means something. Because, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, most people aren't even thinking about looking at data in this capacity, not even aware of it, much less are they doing it. So by having windows like this to hopefully give us a peek under the rug, then we're giving ourselves an informational advantage. All right. So having said that, then the day progresses. What do I see coming through my high volume alerts, which basically is my turbo up family no resistance, was pretty much the shining star today. And the best way I know how to describe the way I saw things unfolding today, based on that compare count information and then the break here to the higher levels. Ooh, Steve, I got a little blue circle here when I tried to show my...
It's waiting for something, huh?
Yeah, it's telling me loading for some reason, so bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully this does not cause a whammy since I'm on the latest developers version debug. All right, bingo. There we go. Okay. So if I just expand this out, and of course we come down here. I went too far now. Okay. So that's Bofi. Yeah, okay, I'm missing some data here. We're having that issue. But in any case, I can pull the windows out individually. And what I mean by that is there's a small bug in the multi-strategy window. I've got 3 strategies in here, and it's not showing me the complete history. But hopefully we'll get that fixed. So what came barreling through here early in the day? Netflix was all over the place. Now, if you caught it down here somewhere, great. But this thing was motoring so fast, I saw it as it was continuing up here. Then what happens? It gets up here, bases out, doesn't wait too long, new high, new high, new high. And then, of course, we just get a slow draw to the upside today. But at the same time, what else was coming through here like crazy today was Square. Boom. I mean, it was like bull flag day today. A lot of things were doing this. Big buyers right off the bat. Guess what? When you see things like this in a bigger cap company like Square and NVIDIA, you can bet your bottom dollar it's institutional buying, all right? Because we can put some volume in the day trading community, but not like this, not on these stocks, all right? And of course, same time, all right, sticky window. when we're pulling these things up, we're also getting these high relative volume readings. Okay. I'm getting the blue circle again, guys, here, and some weird things happening, so bear with me if it continues. I'll just try to relaunch my software here. So the bottom line is this. We see Netflix not basing too long before it decides to get up and go again. So I see Square coming along. What does it do? It's taking its sweet time, plenty of time. Lots of alerts during this area right here where it's pecking these highs. So what do? We can easily set a price alert, right? So little slide here. Don't forget to set those price alerts. And of course, while it was doing that, I tweeted this out. Hey, SQ's taking a rest. Perhaps it's going to take a cue from Netflix. And that's when it was in this little, little basing area right here. So all we have to do, right click up here. You can see the green line, which was the price alert that I had set earlier in the day. And of course, we get the signal as it punches through highs here. I also get confirmation coming through here and my single stock window that yes, indeed, not only is this a nice low risk trade unfolding, but the volume is extremely high. Not only on the relative volume, but being confirmed on the 5 minute. And if you care about the 1 minute, it was there as well. So these were happening all over the place today. Could have had a really nice entry in Square today, right here. Let's take a look at some of the other ones that were coming through here today. So, you know what? I'm getting way ahead of myself because I went right into the compare counts and just jumped right into the juicy Square and Netflix.
Did you now?
But I'll save the rest for last because I forgot to do this, we're going to go back to Holly. All right. So once again, Holly having kind of a tug of war day, up, down, gap up, 3 consecutive down days. Holly's having an issue. Okay, little noise today, but what could we read between the lines? As I was saying earlier, not a lot of choices today where we could have plucked some of the spread between risk off and risk on, but let's just take a look at the last trade, or one of the last trades that came out today, which was a perfect example of risk off and risk on, and being able to potentially make a little bit more than Holly did. So timed exit, and I believe power hour is a good 30-minute hold time here.
Correct.
Yep, there we go, 30-minute hold time. So Holly didn't get stopped out. That profit target didn't get met either, so she timed out. Looking right up here, the shaded area is her in the risk off trade. And I do believe, Steve, that this is where she got out on risk off.
Just under the target, huh?
And see, this is a new addition right here, these new arrows over here, showing the entry and the exit. They used to be over here, but now we're getting an arrow here. So that's new, that's good. And of course, the close, 50 cents between risk off and risk on, although it doesn't look like that big of a move there, but I guess that is 50 cents from there, right up to the top there. Now, late in the day, would have been hard pressed to really, there was nothing on the chart that would have told me, hey, I think this one might have a little bit more left in it. I mean, that's a good energy burn right there. So even though that is showing a nice spread there, was it really feasible to try and play that close to the close? Maybe not. Depends on your aptitude, I guess. Now, TRHC, I remember seeing this one come across. I was like, it's a little thin, right? And of course, what do? We bought it at the top here with Holly. Boom, immediate stop out. Not immediate, but pretty quick there, all right? And then even further below that stop level. Now, of course, when we see Holly either close out early on reduced risk or get stopped out, it never hurts to come up here and set that price alert for the second, third, fourth occurrence as it punches back through that thing. And we can see once it got down with all this business and came back up here and punched, probably had a little help from the market as well during that time. So worked on the second occurrence. Maybe you played it, maybe you didn't, but this would fit the classic definition of a trade around. Looking at the rest here, 65 cents, 45 cents on risk on. So she had better exits today on a lot of her risk off. Reduced risk here of 33 cents, would have ended up losing 74 cents. Of course, wasn't a big surprise today to see the shorts not do too well. So we had a 33-cent loser on the DAN. Very funny. They were shorting Dan today. Ha ha ha. Dan's the owner of the company, by the way. And then MMSI, you know, a little 15-cent winner here on this short here. But, you know, all in all, just kind of a so-so day for Holly. Not extremely, you know, up, not extremely profitable, not down, but just a good tug-of-war session for most of the day here. Now, having said that, it'll be interesting to see how many strategies show up in the hopper after she's done with all the calculations tonight. You know, will it be a big collection again, or, you know, maybe this one up day after 3 consecutive down days will show us something a little bit more interesting. Actually, not 3 consecutive down days, but that was what we had before. So could explain why we saw more shorts showing up. We'll see as things move forward. All right, so any questions about Holly, just go ahead and throw them out there. We'll get to them towards the end.
You want to try and throw your compare account window in there before we forget?
Sure, why not?
Because I know we'll forget.
Yeah. Let me retrieve that from Yield Cloud here.
This was the one that a few people were asking about, showing the new highs, new lows this morning on the open with the institutional big cap guys. Were they in a buying mood or an aggregate type of selling mode?
Yeah, and while I'm dropping that in there, you know, just the rationale on that is, well, when you have institutional orders to get out, you're going to get a certain amount done in that opening 15 minutes. Then you're going to have to start slicing and dicing the orders, but they leave footprints. Okay, that has been dropped into the chat area. I call it the CC family. It's actually a layout file, so you'll just see the 4 windows open up across the top of your screen. If you want to, you could even kick off the ones on the left, unless you really want to keep tabs on the smaller cap stuff. But as we all know, big caps that are dragging this market. I'm sorry, what, Steve?
I said, yeah, going along, if they wanted to kick out the other 2 on the left, you could just delete those windows and resave it to your cloud.
Yep. And then just once you get those 2 positioned, just save your default layout. That way they'll become part of your normal routine there. All right. So once again, hey, Holly gave it a good shot. A couple of trade around opportunities. Nothing to write home about. We'll see where she finishes come the end of the week. All right. So more of these guys that were pumping out today. So once we saw Netflix ripping and we saw SQ setting up, well, then there were a handful of other ones that came. They kept coming through here today. Now, the added benefit of these guys is they're also going to be at all-time highs, meaning when we look to the left, here's the chig that Steve was talking about. When we look to the left, there's nothing for them to bump their heads into. Now, of course, that's not a guarantee, but it's a very nice attribute to have in a trade that you're long from a nice intraday signal and is working for you, right? Of course, you know what? It's also nice to have in BOFI, Steve, because we have the breakout. Let's see, what did I do here? I was like, what in the world am I looking at? I had my 5-minute and my daily reversed. But here we can see the BOFI is also breaking out with that added benefit of that big, fat, juicy short float. So it's going to be very interesting to see what BOFI does tomorrow, because if you're short that thing, all-time highs breaking out, ooh, I wouldn't want to be that guy. Okay, what else do we have here? We also had Casa. And keep in mind, all these were coming through this one window here, which I will gladly drop into the chat window as well. So, you know, we get more things coming through here. And of course, some of them are going to continue, some of them are going to fold back over. But once you're in the money, if you play your cards right with risk management, book the profit on half, try to hold the other half for a second move, well, then you rewarded more times than not today. This one would have folded back over, but you still would have locked in your money on the first lot. WDAY, another one. What do we have here? We have the big buyer, we have the break that takes place, and then we have the push higher for the rest of the day. WDAY, another one. This little guy, poster child for high volume today. UPLD, once it came up here, started busting out right here. I mean, I think this thing early on was showing, you know, it finished the day trading or showing almost 10 on relative volume. During these times right here and through here, we were getting readings almost up to 20, all right? So when you see this pattern taking place and the thing's rocking 20x on a relative volume and high on the 5-minute, that's a pretty good, man, those things are lining up for you. Of course, there's never a guarantee, but if you jump in the car and slam on the gas, it's the car with the most gas in the tank that's going to win the race. And one more of these guys. VEEV. See, this was the day that these were prevalent. I mean, a lot of the times you have to search high and low to find 2 or 3 of these in a given day, if any. But they were just all over the place today. And, you know, having that information 15 minutes into the open, and then seeing Netflix, and then seeing Square set up, and then seeing all these other ones set up, and pretty much do the same as all the other things, that's called, you know, the best way I could describe it today was just being in the slipstream or the zone. You know, everything just kind of lined up. So what? Holly wasn't having a good day. I was seeing all these other things just go bam, bam, bam. And it, you know, in a nice, simple, low risk pattern for the most part. So I'll drop this in, and what I'll say about this, okay, because this is going to be hard pressed to find a simpler pattern than what you see here. But let me say this. Most people are doing it backwards. They get so excited because they've had to sort through 10, 15, 20 symbols to find this, they forget all about volume. And if the gas, if it only has 1/8 of the tank, it's going to get up here and it's going to go wham, right back down below. So what are we doing with this window? We're removing the volume from the equation right off the bat. We don't have to worry about the volume. It's going to be there 9 times out of 10, more than likely. So all we have to do is look at the picture and go yes or no. Then they also have the added benefit of being out of their box on the daily. So that's kind of the 1-2 of this window. So let me go ahead and drop this one in as well and see if we have any pending questions. Steve, anything to kick in while I'm getting this typed in?
Oh, I'm looking at the questions to see if we're caught up. I can drop a link for you there, Abtin, and at the end of the webinar, you can catch a 15% promo code. But we don't offer a free product. The demo product for Trade Ideas is really just a simple shell of the program. It's 20 minutes delayed data. Doesn't have charts. You know, the alerts come through late, but it just kind of gives you a feel for how to use the product, but doesn't really give you a sense of the value. So let me drop in a link there for you, and at the end of the webinar, you'll get a promo code there, and you can use that and try 1 month using that promo code. All right, I'm just dropping that in there to you. And there you go. I'll actually make that public for everybody if they want it. Sorry, Jamie.
So we've got a little bit of time here, so
Yeah.
we can take some questions, or we can take a look at maybe a couple of charts.
Either one. Either if somebody has a question, how do I, or if somebody has a chart they want to look at, we got about 10 minutes.
Yep, so if you guys are sitting on any chart patterns, go ahead and throw them in.
All right.
All right, so we'll take a look at Mike's first. We'll take a look at JD.
Looking at it through my prism over here. I like those wicks. You know, that bottoming tail was really interesting back on February 9th. And you could see 4 or 5 days of really nice push off that bottoming tail. Well, here we are again, kind of in the same area, 2 days in a row with the same kind of a bottoming tail wicks. I don't know if you're long or thinking about getting long, but I would use the bottom of today and Friday as the out, I would say, on that daily chart.
Right. Before we pull up the next chart, I'm going to answer Bob's question real quick here. He says he's new. How do I follow Holly? When do I trade with her? How many stocks on average? And that's a very good question, Bob. Now, keep in mind, this is a statistically based system. So if we want to try to mimic Holly's trades and her performance, then we would actually have to be in every trade that she's in, which some people might subscribe to that theory, others do not. It's certainly not something that you do when you're new to Holly and trying to get acclimated to interacting with it. So we always like to say, just view it as a trader that would be sitting next to you. It's for observation, all right? But the kicker is that every entry that's brought to your attention has statistical weight behind it, right? So you can see each strategy's statistical probability coming into the session for the day, all right? So a lot of the times we'll hear users say, well, I know the statistical weight is behind each and every play, and that's great because, well, you just can't really get this anywhere else. And then, you know, depending on what they also see on the chart pattern and, you know, what is the market doing, things of that nature. Then if they like the trade, if they like what they're seeing on the chart, then they'll take it, all right? You know, it's a get to know you type of process here. So there's all kinds of different ways to interact with her. You know, you see her get stopped out. It's like Steve and Andy and I always talk about when we started trading back in the olden times, back in the 90s. There was always a guy in the office that would, you know, not do so good, so to speak. And they'd be in a trade just about to get stopped out. Sure enough, on the stop out, what would we do? Well, we'd take the other side of that trade. He got stopped out. I'll go long here where he got stopped out. And we'd, in essence, we'd capitalize on that guy's misfortune. Just because the only reason we were even pulling the stock up is because we knew he was in it over there bitching and moaning about to get stopped out. And of course, just like we see time and time again, whether it's a Holly trade or a trade that we put on and we set that tight stop, get stopped out by a penny, and then it turns and burns and goes in our direction. So, you know, whether you're trading around Holly's plays because, hey, this stock was brought to my attention because of Holly. Now, she got stopped out, but boy, it sure is coming up to some nice support on the daily. I think it looks really great. I'm going to make that trade. And of course, the only reason you were paying attention to that stock is because Holly had traded it, right? So there are a lot of different factors, and it's really just a time factor. The more you interact with her, the more of these webinars you attend and hear Steve and myself and Andy talk about it, you know, the more you'll get into the groove with it.
It's also very good for a directional bias. If you look down, Bob, and you see only the trades are long today, well, the AI is telling us that long is the path of least resistance today, no matter what you might be trading. So there's a bigger picture kind of value going on there. Second part of your question is in the other window. It's the strategy window that shows how long each hold time would be. So if you have a strategy name and it's going to have a time stop also column, that's basically going to say how long Holly is going to hold that strategy for, unless she gets stopped out or a trailing stop ensues or a target was hit and there's a reason to get out beforehand. So there's also something to pay attention to. If Holly is all short and the only trades that the AI is taking is short, you know, be careful going long. So there's some bigger picture type of ways to look at that. We got a lot of questions coming in. We're not going to be able to hit them all now because we opened the floodgates. I wanted to go back to XPO. Somebody asked that very early on that chart.
Sure.
David, that's a great looking chart. I love the moving averages supporting that last little flag. I love the way it closed near highs today. And I love the fact it's got 18% short the float. So nice looking chart there on XPO. I like it. No, Bob, the AI is exiting all the trades the same day. The only caveat is risk on is a metric that shows what would have happened if Holly had not exited the trade in the midday and carried the trade into the end of the day. And that's where some of the charts start to show up and show that they're decent looking charts, which, to a newbie, I know that's a tough word to hear. So the more charts you start to look at and the more experience you start to get, the more idea you'll have of, what a good looking chart looks like. But the AI does not carry things overnight. It's always going to exit before the end of the day, and it's up to us to decide if we like that chart, if we want to carry it into a longer swing trade. Marcia, if you want to just trade one stock and get good at it, can you give me an idea of what alerts you might use to pick up the extreme intraday? Maybe numerous prints, high volume, 5-minute volume, things that show activity coming into a single stock. It's hard to just trade one single stock because there's a lot of opportunities out there, and you just might start to paint yourself in a corner with just one single stock. But that's just my opinion.
And really the way you'd want to go about that exploratory process is, from your alert window, you just point to that one single symbol, type it in there, only point the window to that single symbol, and then it's basically filtering becomes a lot less important, right? Because you're looking at one symbol, and then it's really just about going through the alert list and attaching a bunch of alerts, and then going back and reviewing the history and or back testing to see if there might be something there, when you want to just attack one symbol.
All right, there is another one. Somebody was asking, can you quickly show maybe Kevin how, like if he goes to, this would be for anybody who creates a really nice layout at home and then you want to put it on your work laptop or your work computer or your work PC. Just go ahead and go to File, Load, Save to Cloud, Jamie, and this is the steps you guys would do. Once you've got your layout the way you want, Save to Cloud, look at that button he's going to show you, Entire Layout. You click that once and it calls it Layout. You can even put a date behind it just to know when exactly that cloud link essentially backed up your entire layout. So this would be a good answer for you there, Kevin, in terms of using two machines. You just can't be logged into both at once, and there really shouldn't be a reason to do so, but a lot of people will have it loaded on two machines, and the easiest way to transfer your cloud layout is to use that entire layout button. And then when you get to your work, you can load from layout like he's showing you right there. It's sitting right there at the top saying layout, and then you could load that onto your new machine, and it's like you never even had to lift a finger to configure anything.
Yep, nice and easy.
All right, I think there was another stock somebody was asking about. Let's see here. JDXBO, APPN. I tried to look at that one and I didn't really see too much. Let me try again. APPN. No, I didn't look at that one. What I'm seeing by this one here is it's kind of being held down by its daily moving averages. It's having a real tough time in the last 3 days getting back above 29.22. So I would say if you just get a nice trade above 29.23 with some good volume, could be worth taking a shot because it's really knocking up against those levels, and the selling seems to be really hard at about 29, 25, 22-ish. So take a look at those levels and then maybe set an alert, so you don't miss it, either using the Trade Ideas price alerts or your own simple brokerage alert, whether it's E-Trade or TD Ameritrade or what have you. They have alerts as well, so you never miss a price alert triggering through a certain level. All right, Kevin, I'm glad that made sense to you. Awesome. Let's see. We got time for maybe one more. APPN for today. How would your... Okay, the APPN, our platform, let's put it back up on the screen, which it is on the screen. So APPN, all right? Now, the question is, you followed up, which I just caught it, which says, how would your platform take this trade? Okay, notice in the right-hand 15-minute chart, do you see a color gradient there? No matter what stock you type into Trade Ideas, that box is going to give you kind of a roadmap to where your downside stop should be right there, and the upside target looks like it's going back, all the way back to yesterday or Friday to those highs on the upside of the blue area. So easy answer to your question. How would your platform suggest to take this trade? It's right there on the chart in those color gradients. It'll give you a really good idea of where the downside and the upside target should be. And those are not numbers pulled out of thin air, by the way. Those are numbers that are looking at past candles, past high, low, pivots, support, resistance, and other secret sauce that I don't even know about. All right. I think we're pretty much caught up.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right. And it's about that time, so we got a few more announcements. I know Scott has got a promo code. Somebody was interested in getting that, which is really the best way to try the product. So we'll go ahead and downshift into that.
Yeah. All right, Scott.
Been giving it a try. The promo code for a month. There's no obligation, no contract. Do that. The team was kind enough to put together an ebook just in time for the markets, deciding to get interesting on us here recent weeks. So go ahead and download that, trade-ideas.com/ebook, and just pop your email in. You get a link in your email with the download. It's free and it's good, and it provides you with some five strategies, 5 tools to keep in your trader toolbox. Go ahead and do that. We also have. Whoa!
Sorry, Scott.
Yeah,
I just wanted to show everybody this is when we released the book, so kind of good timing there.
Yeah.
On the release of the ebook.
It's a good time to read those 5 strategies and pick one that is gonna fit your profile there. If you're an Interactive Brokerage client, remember that we're allowing auto trading via Interactive Brokerage using our Brokerage Plus plugin, our module. So if you're an Interactive Brokerage client, contact customer service for help setting that up if you really want to try it out. It's now actually available not just in the betas, but in the regular ones. It's free to use if you're a premium subscriber. And if you start using it now, when we do start charging for it, you'll be grandfathered in and will not be charged. Otherwise, it will become an add-on that will be an additional cost sometime in the future once it's out of beta. So if you're an Interactive Brokerage client and you want to manage your portfolio from within Trade Ideas or Auto Trade, either black box or gray box, contact customer service if you have any questions about getting that going. We also have a promo code discount, 15%. Oh, first, yeah, good there. Podcast. They come out every Friday. We'll have a new one out this Friday. Last Friday's is already available for you to download. Just go ahead and search for Trade Ideas Podcast in whatever app you use to listen to podcasts with, and it'll come up. Click on subscribe, download a couple of the last previous editions, and enjoy it. And then the new one will be on this Friday. We do have a discount code, and that code is Holly Madness, all caps. Go ahead and use that before the end of the month to save 15% off any subscription. You can also use it to upgrade. So if you're upgrading from standard to premium, just use that. You can get a standard version of Trade Ideas for under $3 a day, or try out premium for for $7.50 a day, or get the yearly, and it's less than the cost of your lunch. Really a great investment. So don't hesitate on that if you want to give Trade Ideas a try. Go ahead and use the code. You can also download a PDF with a lot of these slides with the codes and how to find the ebook and how to get the podcast, all that good stuff, including the contact information. Just download that, expand the handouts panel, and you go to webinar interface. Click the blue link. Follow Steve Gomez at Today Trader on Twitter. Jamie's at QuantBot. Dan Merkin's Trade Ideas 1. And then on Facebook, like our page so that you can share all the neat content we post with your friends. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Jamie, Steve.
Thanks, everybody, for popping in. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Scott. See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah,
See you tomorrow.
Pick this up a little bit later, and you get an email reminder where the playlist is tomorrow. Bye, guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.